were trying to track bear behavioral patterns. Because of Hurricane Helene, a lot of deforestation has occurred.
A lot of their environment has changed, and these bears are going to have to move into new areas. And a lot of people that have not seen bears or ever had any interaction with bears, there's a very good possibility that they have bears in their front yard, their backyard, or on their porch.
We're kind of stepping on their land here. Like, how would you feel if like a black bear came into our apartment?
There's like an absurd amount of bones at this spot. There's a whole skeleton over here. I think it's like a deer skeleton or something. And with your long experience with working with bears and studying them, have you ever yourself had any close calls or any interactions?
Yes, I've had a few. And to be honest with you, the majority of the time that I've had it is when I surprised them. I showed up somewhere I wasn't supposed to be, and I got there in a quiet mode or a sudden quick move that I got into an area that they were at.
I might have overstayed our welcome a lot here, and I just need this to be over.
Promise me you won't go out and get it by yourself.
No, I'm going out there and getting it myself. I'm going to the forest.
No, I'll go with you. Just don't go there by yourself, promise me.
Welcome back, beautiful souls, to the Horror Pop Extravaganza.
What is up, all you beautiful souls, man? I hope you are excited to be here. You know what time it is. You know where you're at. This is the Horror Pop Extravaganza, where we bring the macabre and the mindful together and try to do something cool with that. And today's a very special day, man. It's a super cool episode. I'm excited. I hope that you're excited. For anyone who's listened to the show for any amount of time knows that I thoroughly just enjoy the process of filmmaking and, you know, people going out there and trying to make movies and doing a thing and saying, I got this story in me that I just got to get out and I'm going to make it happen one way or another. And we've been super fortunate on the show to have some guests come on who we've been able to talk to about that process. And I am so stoked today to be able to bring to you all of the beautiful souls who are listening to this or watching this right now. We have Jake Casey and Thomas Tarter, and they are the kind of, I would say, the two biggest creative forces behind this movie that we're going to talk about called Payne's Branch. And this was brought to me through our social media. B Money, that's how everybody knows him. B Money, you know who I'm talking about. Him and I just did an episode together about The Sixth Sense. And he said, hey, man, you interested in doing this thing? And I said, always, you know, I get so excited. And then I just sat down and watched the movie right before we started. That's how I like to do it. I like to really give it my full attention and have everything be kind of fresh on the brain. But gentlemen, welcome. Thank you so freaking much from not only myself, but the whole team at the Horror Pop Extravaganza for being here with us today. Super rad. Just can't thank you enough. So welcome to the show. And
we're happy to be here.
Oh, thanks, man.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. And I'm gonna jump right in and I'll ask the same question to both of you, and we'll start with you, Jake. You know, just give me a little bit of who you are, where you're from, and where that initial spark for I want to make a movie, you know, came from. What inspired you? What was it that really kind of started this path that led to, you know, Payne's Branch?
Yeah, that's a great question, a great way to start off. So what I will say is I was born actually in the Florida Keys, so South Florida, and then I moved up to Vero Beach, Florida. So being born there's a really good art scene there. There's a lot of creative people. There's a lot of creative things just all around. So as like a young kid, I was constantly surrounded by like all this art and all this creativity. And I didn't really know how to like channel that, but I always knew that I was like drawn to it. And I've always been like kind of a little more creative and like kind of like to do art and stuff like that. And then I ended up moving to Clayton, North Carolina, which is the exact opposite. It's very, you know, farm town, rural, very like straight in the way it normally is. And that's cool too. But in a weird way, I kind of like was able to combine a little bit of my view Vero Beach, Florida personality with my Clayton, North Carolina personality. And it was kind of like it built this kind of like world that I was able to kind of like make creative art, but also be realistic and, you know, real at the same
Right.
time.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think both of the towns I'm from helped a lot with that because I got the groundingness from Clayton with the whimsicalness of Vero Beach. So it's kind of weird how that worked out.
yeah. That's
And then, you know, I was just, yeah, just made music videos and made YouTube videos. I love to make YouTube videos, but it took a while to really figure out what I wanted to do. So I went to college for electronic media broadcast. That's where I met Thomas, and he'll get into that too. And we had all this equipment, we had all this stuff, and I was like, I want to make a film. I want to leave here with the film because we had everything we needed, and
yeah.
we had a great friendship. And you know, like I say, I always tell people with creative projects, it's more important to like who you're working with than anything. You know, if you're working with people you don't like, it's not going to work. It has to be a good creative
Absolutely.
environment. So we met and we hit off. We met first day of class, and we literally hung out every single day since then. So it's been
That's
amazing.
awesome, man. And I feel like, and we'll get when we get into talking more about the movie, I feel like you can see some of that in some of these you know, discussions and the dialogue that happens. It feels like two people who actually know each other. And it feels like at some points I'm like, I don't even know if they're making a movie or they're just expressing themselves. You know what I mean? Like where they are currently in life and what they are going through. And I love that, seeing some of this stuff potentially come through. Not sure if it was, you know, intended or not, but Thomas, why don't you give us, you know, some of the same, who you are and where you're from and how you got, you know, excited about, you know, being on a movie and pursuing that filmmaking process.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Thomas. I'm originally from central New Jersey. My parents and my family moved down to North Carolina about 4 years ago now, and that's when I went to App State and met Jake. And honestly, and he kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, he kind of got me into filmmaking because honestly, if I didn't meet him, I don't think it would have been an avenue that I would have pursued
Right.
because we went to school for electronic media and broadcasting, so that's more like news and sports, which is what I initially wanted to go into. But then Jake is like, "Hey, let's make a movie," and I thought to myself, "Okay." My thought going into it was, okay, he's my friend, and I only have two classes, so might as well try something new.
Right.
But now I started doing, looking more and more into filmmaking and stuff, and Jake and I are looking into doing a couple other projects, but see what happens. It's a
That's
fun thing to do.
awesome, man. And there's, you know, some of my favorite, like the Kevin Smiths of the world and the Tom Savinis and all these guys that came out of New Jersey. There's so much great going on in Jersey and in North Carolina. I was in the military for almost a decade and got to travel all over the United States. And you're both in beautiful parts of the country, yes, in North Carolina now. So let's talk about how this, how did it even, what was the brainchild? How did this, what was the first initial seed where it was like, yo, okay, we want to make a movie. I did read somewhere that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you made this thing for like $2,000, which is unbelievable. I mean, incredible that you were able to pull off anything that you pulled off for that amount of money. We talked to a lot of our guests and stuff like that. And, when we think micro budgets, we're thinking $100,000, $250,000. When you get down into that, really, that's what I love and I'm passionate about it. It's early Robert Rodriguez, it's these guerrilla filmmakers who are just like, I don't care. I'm going to make this movie, Roger Corman, like, hey, the cops are coming, just film them. Who cares? We'll deal with the fallout later. But, how did Payne's Branch begin? Where did it start from?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, it actually started with a name. I love the name Payne's Branch because I was pretty hell bent on finishing making a film because I had all that free equipment, all that stuff in college. So I was like, I'm going to leave here with a film. What type of film should we make, right?
Yeah.
So I had a name for a film that I really liked, which was Payne's Branch, which me and Thomas used to fish on this little road because I love fishing. I got Thomas into fishing too, just like I got him into filmmaking. So
Yeah.
we are, yeah. So there's this road there. We were fishing one time, and I looked at the name of the street, and it says Payne's Branch. It's a little road in Boone. I was like, something about that name I just was obsessed with. It sounded so cool. It didn't really give a whole lot away. It kind of was ominous. I loved it. I loved it. So I was like, I want to make a film, and that's going to be the name. Now, when we went to making the film, it was pretty interesting. So we had another friend at a time, Brian. Hope he's doing well now. We haven't talked to him in a while, but he wanted to be in it as an actor. So we sat around in my dorm and just brainstorming ideas. How are we going to make this film? How are we going to do this? And what we did was we wrote a whole script for this movie called Payne's Branch, which was similar when it comes to like two college kids going out into the woods. It was very scripted, but they meet like a psycho guy and he's like a hobo and he goes missing. Kind of a generic cliche story, but like we can
Slasher a
handle
little bit more.
Yeah, slasher horror.
Yeah.
So we take it real serious. We go and we get these little posters and we're putting around campus saying, "Do you want to be in our movie?" We're looking for makeup crew and the camera crew. Doing it the right way, doing it to put more money into it, get a bigger team. And we got people to call us back. We had a whole group of people, and we give them our little pitch. We talk about the film, and I'm pretty open with like creative ideas. I'm like, okay, this is the base of it. This is going to change. Like, let's all add to this. Right now, we have a very generic base level story, but the good part was when we're all going to put our, a creative foot forward and get that going. And we met with the people, and it ended up being we were all in their apartment, and me and Thomas don't smoke or nothing. And the day we all went, they were all in there just hitting a bong and messing around. So I was like, so this was our big meeting. We had a pitch plan, everything, and then it ended up just being me and Thomas just sitting there where they were all hitting from a bong. So we quickly realized that maybe if we want to get this thing done, we got to just do it ourselves. And a year went past since then. That moment happened because we had summer and then one semester after, and Hurricane Helene hit Boone, North Carolina, and that was a pretty big hurricane, and we saw a lot of deforestation, a lot of devastation there. And it's crazy, but we got the idea from that movie. And also one time, because Thomas and me lived in the same apartment complex, and I went outside to help just look around and see what was going on. I actually saw a bear coming down the mountain from outside my apartment. And I was already kind of inspired by Hurricane Helene. I mean, this is like two days after Hurricane Helene. And I look outside.
He has keen eyesight because he tried to show me it and it was like way out. So I'm like,
Right.
where's this bear you're talking about?
Yeah. Thomas
Right.
was like, cars are going by. Everyone's like, there's FEMA trucks and stuff. And me and Thomas are over there debating. I'm like, that's a bear right there. So
Which is funny because you two do the same exact thing in the movie. When you're looking at the pictures, you're like, no, it's right there. It's a bear. You see the eyes, and it's like, no, that could be the eyes are further apart.
Yeah.
All these different elements. But so really, it was the environment. It sounds like inspired, a ton of how this thing would unfold. And now, how did you have much help outside of the two of you as far as crew or anything goes?
It was just me, Thomas, and my dad. My dad acted in it. He was a
So
Professor
I was
Garrison.
wondering if that was your dad, who plays the teacher or the professor, the bear expert, for lack of a better phrasing.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got we go to the weed house and we're like, okay, this ain't gonna cut it. These people are gonna do it, but we're gonna make this movie. We're gonna take the two of us. We set out. Did you have like a finalized script before you started even turning cameras on?
No, it was all improv.
Yeah.
It was all improv. The whole film was improv. Yep. And we had locations and kind of like scene ideas, like we want this to happen. Like it was like a layout, but when it comes to dialogue, it was all improv. Besides the very first scene that we wanted to be scripted because we wanted to make sure we introduced the movie right. And Thomas can tell you about how hard that first scene was.
Yeah, like I mean, the first scene took like over a month between like weather delays and like things not working out, and I don't even remember like whatever else I guess just didn't work out because we had to find like a perfect location because the first scene was like in like a really like renowned pathway called the Greenway, and like everybody and their mother and their uncle like walks on it. So we're like, okay, well, how are we gonna make it seem more remote?
Sure.
So we found like this really remote place, and then Jake basically, and was the whole pace for the entire movie, is basically like, okay, here's what I want out of the scene, make something of it. And I'm like, okay, here's a log, let's sit on it and let's make this work.
Right.
I actually think the only part of that scene that was planned was the peanut butter, the trail cam, and the hammer. Everything else was like I had to come up with. So
Yeah.
Nice. But I think that's what. So after I was done with this, me and my wife sat down and watched it together. At the end of it, she's like, I don't know how I feel about it. I'm like, I don't know. There's something there that speaks to me. And I believe that it is the rawness of the entire thing. It really does feel like, am I going to sit here and tell you it's a perfect movie? No, because, perfect movies don't exist. But for both of you, kind of cutting your teeth and figuring this thing out, there is a level of human vulnerability and, depth that I didn't expect. And I will be the first to say, it's hard for me to say this is a horror movie. I think it has a lot of good horror elements, but at its core, you know, for me it was a human story, and it's watching these two guys. And I think one of the most profound moments of the entire thing for me is at the end when you're talking by the campfire and you're giving this exposition, and you're like, you know, we're set up in this world where college isn't what it used to be. It used to be this place where that was the gate to get education. And you even bring it up, you say ChatGPT can only take me so far, and these things, you know, along the way. But that struggle, that very real world struggle that I think your, you know, generation, I'm not going to, you know, I don't know how old either of you are, but it just by looking at you, you know, and saying you're in college and doing these things, I can make a general assumption, but it is the world we live in where, you know, you used to get out of college with a degree and be able to get a nice internship or a good entry level job, whereas that stuff doesn't exist anymore. And so and I could be wrong, but I feel like, you know, especially now that you've told me it was improv, that I see this kind of real world struggle with, like, you know, we're at this rite of passage time of life and stuff just isn't playing out the way everybody promised me. I went through something very similar myself at one time, but those are the pieces of this movie that I thoroughly enjoyed, where you got to see, you know, and you were fishing. I love that you told him don't cut towards yourself. As somebody who grew up, even though you picked on us Yankees a little bit, as somebody who grew up in the great state of Michigan, hunting and fishing, you know, that was the biggest thing ever, is don't ever cut towards yourself. You learned that, you know, when you were a kid, and then seeing you guys out there fishing and doing all this stuff. There's an authenticity to it, and filming in the aftermath. And I'd like to hear more, you know, about the locations and how you guys went about, because you know, that's another big bad in this movie is nature. You know, it's almost like the villain in this movie is nature, whether it be the hurricane that destroyed everything or the displacement of the bears that would then, you know, turn into something that, you know, is kind of man versus nature the whole time. But maybe you can give us a little bit about, you know, the scouting and finding these places that you were able to, you know, hang out and make a movie.
Well, first,
Yeah.
I think I'm going to say that Minnesota
Michigan,
is more
Michigan, or yeah,
Michigan.
yeah,
Sorry, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Michigan is more like, I guess, northern Midwest, Great Lakes. I don't know if you'd consider it Yankee or not, but
Right, right.
um,
Yeah, I would
But I'm
consider
just giving you a
Yankee.
hard time. I'm just teasing at the same time too, you know. I've being in the military, I have so many friends from your neck of the woods, you know, being down south, and I'm an individual that just believes in celebrating culture everywhere, you know, and celebrating humanity and those things. But yeah, I'm just teasing you with that. But yeah, so where, I mean, was this like, how
but
big
what
of an area are you guys looking at that you were shooting in and all this stuff?
we've looked in the high country, right, Jake? Like the high country region, like Boone and Watauga and Ashe County, pretty much, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. We made sure with this film, I was pretty adamant on having a lot of different locations because, you know, we don't have a big budget, we don't have a whole lot of stuff, you know,
Sure.
characters. So I was like, what we need to do is we need to make sure that this movie has a lot of different backgrounds, you know, because that's something we could do for basically free and still add movement and pace to the
Right.
film. And so we would go out and look at spots. A lot of it was spots I like to fish in the area, so we was like, oh, let's film here. Some
Dude,
of
it
it
was
was rural.
pretty. Like wherever you were on the, you know, the river running right there, and then everything, even some of the, you know, kind of I guess B-roll of just nature itself was like, I was like, and growing up where I grew up, deep in the woods, I'm like, I feel that. I can hear the rain, you know, on the leaves and stuff like that, and you can, you know, it was very. I don't know, well thought out. I'm glad, you know, that you found these spots. And what about the devastation stuff with those like beat up campground? Where was that at? And how did you get, you know, access to all that stuff?
Yeah, that was in Lansing, North Carolina, which is a little town I used to go with my dad all the time and go trout fishing. And I remember there was this old little white house there, and me and my dad would always go by and be like, man, that is such a beautiful house. It's right on the creek, it's right on the river, and then behind it is woods that you can fish, public land woods that goes all the way up to Virginia state line. And we would always say, oh, that house is so beautiful. And then right after the storm, I remember the first thing I thought of is like, that house is probably destroyed, you know? And
Right.
I went back there and it turns out the house is fine. But down back in those woods, there's this little campground that was there probably since like the 70s. And it was just devastated. It was completely gone. But I knew that there was a campground there because when I used to fish, I was like, oh, look at this old abandoned campground. So I knew that that campground would probably have been destroyed a little bit from the hurricane. So I was like,
Sure.
let's go down there. But I will say, though, there was a lot of stories about this film. We almost risked our life many of times to get to these locations. We're walking, I had Thomas with the camera equipment. We're walking down. There's like down power lines and like
In the
power
no,
lines.
listen,
It
in
was
the
a mess.
movie, I was like, "Holy shit, you guys! Like, are you?" Because I know you don't have a budget. I'm like, "Are those real power lines?" You know what I mean? That were
Yeah,
down on
no,
the
no.
crazy.
Oh,
Yeah.
we got power lines that shot. I didn't realize that, but yeah, there were like open electrical power lines, and I think were we supposed to be there? Because I think there might have been a couple of no trespassing signs,
There,
but
well,
I don't
you
know.
even put the no trespassing in the movie, which I loved. And you're like, hey, you give the exposition, and you're like, I know that this is public land, so the creek or the river is public. So if we wade through the water, we're technically on public land, and then we could go up. But when I saw that in the movie, you
Yeah.
know, it made me think back to Sam Raimi talking about we were using a real shotgun in The Evil Dead. We were just shooting straight shotgun shells out the window, you know, and it's like that's gnarly, dude. Like that's wild, but to be in these environments, and I'm glad because again, it lends this level of authenticity to the fact that you've brought us into this devastation, you know, you've brought us into this world of real world tragedy, and that sucks, you know. In the north we don't get a lot of hurricanes. We have other events, but I have been in a couple, you know, down in Florida. That's where I went in the Navy all the time. I was always in Florida and stuff like that. But you bring this level of authenticity, and I love, you know, wading through the creek and stuff like that. My 21st birthday we spent wading through a creek and a river like that. So I thought it was awesome, you know, that you were able to find these cool spots that for the budget you had, it looks like you had 10 times that amount of money. You know what I mean? Like you did a really good job with using nature and using what you had available to you to make this thing happen. And how now has your dad ever acted or anything, or how'd you convince your dad to hop in the movie with you? And because he was fun, man, he was like a fun character, this, you know, this kind of quirky professor. But yeah, fill me in a little bit, fill us all in.
Yeah, well, he's gonna love that because he watches all the interviews we do for it, all the press we do. So he's gonna replay this part for a while. I was like, oh, he loved my character. He really, he always
Yes.
talks about it.
Chris,
So,
you killed it. We
yeah,
salute you here at the Horror Pop Extravaganza. We salute Chris Casey. Just for you.
I
yeah,
think
no,
Yes.
Jake and I have said it a few times. He's just like naturally good at everything, so acting's no
Nice.
different.
Nice.
yeah. My dad, he's great. He's my biggest supporter and like my best friend. I mean, he taught me how to hunt. He taught me how to fish, and he's always been there to help me out and support me however he can. And I remember we wanted to interview Thomas's. What was it, Thomas? Your biology professor, right?
Yeah, somebody in the science department, but he wasn't. He kind of passed on it.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah.
So we were in a bind because we kind of had it like we didn't, like I said, we didn't have script, but we had like I had a pretty good idea of how I wanted each scene to play out. Like I had it written down on note cards and in my Google Docs and stuff like that. So I kind of knew
Sure,
how I
yeah.
wanted things to play out. So I was very adamant on there to be a professor scene that kind of like reiterates, because that kind of, in my opinion, is an important scene because it's kind of where it starts to take a turn for the, you know, the scary a little bit, because it's when the
Right,
professor's
right.
telling you how, you know, these bears, y'all basically like y'all watch out now because these bears are coming, you know,
Right.
and they're changing. And I felt like that's kind of where it took a little turn. So it was important to have that scene. And my dad was just, you know, being the supporter he is, I was like, hey, Dad, I mean, you kind of look the part, you know, if you walked around the campus dressed as is, you go to work, they'll think you're a professor, you know, you could probably
Right,
play it
right.
off. And, you know, he's been in sales for a while. He knows how to talk. He has charisma and stuff. So I was like, I think he'll be great on camera. And, you know, his experience hunting and stuff, he knows about nature enough to be able to, you know, improv
Sell it.
dialogue.
Sure,
So
yeah.
I just, yeah. So I just get the scene. We put a coffee cup on the table in one of the public access libraries at App State where we're allowed to film inside. And we set up the little scene, and Professor Garrison was born. We just tell him to improv about the bears. And I think he did an amazing job. I think we
He
got it in like
improv'd that
maybe
too?
he improv the whole thing.
I think God was on our side with the room too, because there are like 3 levels worth of these like little study rooms, because in the App State Public Library, and that one happened to, I just picked like a random one in the schedule because I'm like, okay, we have to get this done, and that one happened to be like more of like a, I guess, an office-y
Looked more like
looky
a sure.
feel. Yeah, like they had like, I think they had like a nice picture in the backdrop, or if I can remember too, that worked well with the movie. So like, oh, this room really works.
And you had a couple of
Yeah,
books
Who
on
we left out with that
you had a
one.
couple of books on there as well. The different bear books on the desk. I love you guys in the library where you give Thomas like the children's bear book, and he's like, "Come on,
Yeah,
dude!"
that was one of my
Like,
favorite scenes too.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was funny.
Yeah, that was wonderful. So is all this, all the school stuff then was shot on campus where you two went to school? Now, are you either of you still in school, or is this you graduated and all that stuff?
yeah, we're both graduated now. That was made our final year of college, so final semester of college. We did that, and then I actually broke my foot, so we had to come back and finish in the summer. And Thomas still had the lease on his apartment, so thankfully we were able to finish the film. But I came back in the summer, so we were still freshly out of college about then. I think we finished in June and started in about January. So
And
yep.
then released, it was October of 2025, correct? Is when
Yeah,
you started.
I spent all summer pretty much editing it, getting the sound right, because I used Film Hub as a distributor. And they have a very hard QC process, and I passed it on the first time, which was probably the biggest accomplishment I did on the film. Because I mean, I heard nightmares about the Film Hub QC and how it fails people and they can't get on, and they're making them redo it. And I was just like, I slaved away for 2 months finishing it, but we were able to get past QC first time and then
That's
get it up for
awesome,
distribution in
man.
October.
And it is
Yeah.
available on Fossum, is where I watched it. I was hoping that I could find it. I'm rooting for you guys. I'm hoping that maybe you'll get it like a physical release that I can buy sometime, or even a Apple TV or something like that where I can support financially, because all of us here at the Horror Pop Extravaganza, we know that if we want to vote for film, we got to vote with our wallets, man. Like, we have to vote with our wallets and with our streams and with our reviews. Like, all those things are so important. But anybody
Hey,
who
Possum were the
wants
first
to.
people to take us, so shout out Possum.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, shout out
dude.
Fossum for sure.
Shout out
Yep.
Fossum, man. And you know what? It's the first time I really jumped on there. I'm a big Pluto TV, Tubi, because you find independent horror stuff that, there's a lot of indie horror out there. I've watched so much of it over my life. There's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad, and then there's somewhere where I think you guys fall, where I think Payne's Branch falls, is for me, this is a great, great example of we proved we can do it. Maybe somebody will give us a little bit of a budget and let us show you, where we might be able to take this thing and where we might be able to go, because it's so hard. People don't understand how hard it is to make a movie. Like, it's very rare that people fully grasp, what it takes to. And if you're doing all the editing, like, I can send you this little short I made when I was in the Navy, kind of the same thing. We had no money. I was like, we're going to make a little horror movie on the boat. And I had these stuffed Fraggle Rock characters. So I made a little horror movie about, these little killer dolls and stuff. But what you guys did, I go back and I watch, like when Sam Raimi did In the Woods, or James Wan, that original 7-minute cut of Saw that he did, the short film. Even Mike Flanagan with Oculus, when he made the short film. I can see it. You guys really do have something, and I hope you know that. I think this is going to be a very divisive movie. I think people are either going to like it or they're not. There's not going to be a lot of middle ground of like, I kind of enjoyed that. Like I said, my wife was not the biggest fan, whereas I walked away and I'm like, dude, these guys, there's a voice here. There's some little bit of something that I want to see somebody hopefully give you the opportunity to continue to expand upon, because I love what you did with Nothing, man. It's an incredible, and I give you kudos, like truly kudos for what you were able to accomplish. So why don't we talk a little bit about the movie itself, and kind of fill people in on what it's about. And so if you were to give your, I guess, elevator pitch, for lack of a better term, on Payne's Branch, how would you sell this movie to somebody and let them know, kind of what they're getting into?
Well, first, I want to thank you for all those kind words about the film and just respecting the process and all that. That really means a lot to me. That's exactly what I was hoping for, like, make something to show, like, this is what we might be able to do. So maybe if we get more of a budget next time, we'll see what we can do. But I really appreciate those words. I mean, it's really nice to hear that, because we have had, divisive reviews. We have some people that love it, some people that hate it, and it's never in between. And I'll take that, because I knew I made a film that wasn't for everyone, between the found footage and also, I feel like some people that were even in the horror community were a little bit, like, this movie's not as scary as they would have liked it, you know? And I
Sure.
wanted it to be scary, but I really felt like the thing I really wanted to back on was that character dynamic between me and Thomas, because I felt like that was something that we could have that, other films didn't have because we are so close and we do have that friendship. And I really thought, man, this is better than any $1,000 plus prop we could add, So I really wanted to
Sure.
bank in on that. And I really appreciate those kind words. But,
Well,
this,
absolutely, man. And I mean every single one of them. I hope you know that. I'm not trying to like inflate your ego or anything. I genuinely mean that stuff.
well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I would say this movie, if you want to watch it, is a movie that is the best compliment I got on it was something from my uncle Nick. He said this movie brought him back to college. It kind of made him feel like how it was being in college. I would tell people if they want to see a movie that's raw, that's honest about that college experience with a little bit of horror elements in it, you would like it. But I would say don't go in expecting to be terrified or scared or to the edge of your seat. But if you want to see something that kind of develops and kind of has interesting character dynamics, you'll probably like this film because it's more of a collegey feel good movie than anything at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
and I mean honestly, the scariest thing and Thomas, it's your performance, man, around that bonfire when you're talking and he's just sitting there and giving this like, damn, dude, like the world is not what I expect. The world is not, and I think that's something we all face as human beings. And Thomas, you hit that on with your, just your face and your dialogue, man. Like you sold something that was truly human. And in that one moment, that's when I was like, okay, give these guys a little more money. I think if they had, a little more money, because I do think you would grab maybe the horror community even a little bit more because the scariest image in the whole movie for me was that doe with its jaw dropped open. I was like, oh, dude, like that's a nightmare, and that's what the Blair Witch did for us. We have to fill in the blanks with our mind. Like, what would grab a deer by the face and rip its jaw open, And then you got the one with the missing leg, and it's like, oh shit, dude, like something we had the bones and things like that. We have all this. But it was that human moment where it's like, man, I thought I wanted to be this thing, but it turns out that sucked my soul out of me, and it wasn't this fun thing that I was excited about. It turned into something else. I'm someone who went through that, a little bit later in life. At 36 years old, I left corporate America and said I'm going to be an artist for the rest of my life. So I felt that, it was very relatable. It was very human, and I saw that raw emotion there. And so even though you didn't have the big scares, and most of that is because, the budget, you just can't do big scares. People don't know what it costs to do a practical effect. And CGI, if you don't have the money to invest in really good CGI, I think it takes away. It would have stripped your movie of its humanity had there been a bunch of, bears running around or like a scary CGI bear face. But maybe this is something like The Evil Dead, maybe it is something where you can take this idea and say, hey, man, look at this, and then almost remake the thing with a bigger budget and maybe a couple more elements or things like that. But I really believe in what you two are doing here. And I hope that everyone listening to this, listening to the Horror Pop Extravaganza, all those beautiful souls out there, I can't encourage you enough to, go to Fossum. It's free. You don't got to pay anything for it. And I was kind of scrolling through there, man. They got some bangers on there. I'm actually going to go through and they got some really good stuff. And I'm going to go through and start looking a little bit deeper. But jump on Fossum. I will put a link directly to the movie in the show notes. So if you want to look there, and also, the social medias, if you guys want to share any of those as well, I'll be sure to put those all in the show notes and do that stuff. But just
What I want to say is,
please do. Yes, I want
yeah, yeah. I was just going to say, I was going to address your the two parts of what you're saying before. So first with the bonfire scene, I'll say we did have quite a few pep talks about that because we knew that that scene was going to be pretty big. He's like, Jake was like to me, okay, this is going to be like a big scene towards the end, and you're going to just basically talk about life. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. So, and I didn't expect it to, or no, actually I did expect it to be around a bonfire, but I guess I didn't expect it to go as deep as I thought it was going to go. But I think that's the good thing about it being impromptu is that you can just say what you want.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was definitely one of my favorite scenes. I love the campground up there too in Todd, North Carolina. Beautiful, beautiful campground. I
Yeah,
would love to definitely go back up there again.
and there's something about I don't know, maybe and you experienced this. I've spent a lot of my life sitting around bonfires, but there is something about a bonfire that brings our soul out, man. It helps us to bear that and to because as far back as human history goes, we've been gathering around bonfires. It's like our first kind of
Yeah.
meeting place once we figured out fire. But yeah, dude, so just incredible job there. Like seriously, kudos to you on pulling that off. And then, we get to the big kind of finale, where we do get, and I do want to ask how did you pull the bear off? It was very well done. As someone who I drove around when I was doing the corporate thing. I was a pharmaceutical sales rep, and I used to drive all over northern Michigan. And I would see black bears a lot. They would be in people's trash trying to eat things, and there would be bears all over. Never big ones, though, like the big scary one you were standing next to in the library or wherever you were at.
Yeah.
That sucker was a monster. But how did you, if you don't mind filling us all in, how did you execute that final sequence?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've had some people that have gave us some credit because they thought that was, pretty well done at the end. And we took a lot of work because I was like, we need to make sure that this is short, this is brief, but it's realistic, because it's me in a suit, basically. I'll just kill it
Yeah,
right
yeah,
there.
yeah,
It's
dude.
me. It's me wearing a bear suit. But what we're like is like, if they see this bear suit for more than 10 seconds, it's gonna be like, that's obviously a bear suit. So I was
Right.
very adamant on having it be short and quick. And Thomas had a great idea. We used to just hang out in my apartment, just brainstorm watching like hockey and stuff, just coming up with ideas
Yeah.
for the film. And he was like, I got an idea, Jake. I was like, okay, what is it? Because I already knew that we were gonna have the costume and we're only gonna show like waist down of the costume. And because I'm kind of taller, so I was like, if I sprawl out, I probably could pull it off for about 10 seconds. I said, we got 10 seconds to work with. But how are we
Right.
really gonna make it? And Thomas said what we can do, because I already was like, let's keep the camera on the ground. That way we keep it lower, and
Mhm.
it looks out of focus and right. And then Thomas like, let's throw the focus. I was like, that's awesome. Because if we throw the focus,
Genius,
that
dude.
it adds a realistic element, because if a camera was to drop in the real world like we were gonna do, it wouldn't be a perfectly focused. But also all you get is that silhouette, that black silhouette that looks like a bear big enough. And I was like, that's perfect. We will roll with that. And then what also I did was, I had the Nat sound. I'm a big into like audio editing. That's like that was my thing in college. I loved audio. And what I was like is, how am I gonna make this sound real? Because if you take one of those like bear growls, freesound.com, whatever,
Right,
bear
right.
growls, and you drop it right on top, if you drop it right on top of the mix, like you just take the file and slap it there, it sounds so forced. It sounds right ahead because the camera's about 30 yards, 20 yards back.
Sure.
So what I did was I took my boom recorder. I went out in my backyard woods because I got about 2 acres behind my house. And I would have my dad, Chris Casey, came in and clutch again with a Bose speaker with that sound playing. But I would have him playing it about 20 yards out. So you had that natural length. And then I would boom mic it from there.
Nice.
So when I layered it into the mix, it sounded like the bear was about where it should be. And that was probably the most teased, but I loved it though, because I like audio editing. But that took like a long time to get that sound mix to where it didn't sound like right on top of the
And I
mix.
mean, everything. So what were you shooting on? What, cameras were you guys running on?
Yeah, we were shooting with a typical broadcast camera. I think it was like a Sony HRX 800, I believe is what it's
Oh,
called, something
sure,
like
sure,
that.
sure.
And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We love it. It's awesome. And that's what we did, because like we went to school for journalism, so we were always shooting like interviews and like little broadcast stuff. But like, this camera's awesome. It's lightweight. It's handheld. It has a really good audio system, because we would put my boom mic right on top of it and put an XRL cable right
I
in the.
saw it
And
in
that's
one
what we
of
love.
the in the shadows. I saw the boom hanging off, and I was like, smart,
Yep,
dude. I
yep,
was like,
yep,
and that's
yep.
one thing I also give you a ton of credit for as well, is the consistency. The consistency of the exposure, the consistency of the camera, everything, in a lot of really independent stuff. And you guys are below independent, dude. I don't even know what to call you, but you did it's you get lighting that's just not quite right. You get these things that are not quite right. Whereas this, I'm like, yo, it's consistent. It looks the same through every frame. I don't know how much, grading or anything had to go into it, but that's a hard process to even get a movie to look the same from frame one to frame end is really difficult. It's not an easy thing to do. And you did awesome, man.
I
So
think a lot
Thank
of
you.
that's just us checking, like, does this sound right? Does this look good? Because, like, honestly, they have a cool feature on the thing too. You can like flip the lens to the other side and like show them kind of like the preview. to the other
Oh,
side.
nice.
So
So you can monitor almost while you're.
That helped a
Yeah.
lot. That helped a lot. We would flip it. And, we both had experience with cameras and stuff because we were trained to be like MMJ reporters, so like you have to be decent with the camera. So
Sure.
having two actors that were doing handheld, but also both had pretty good. I mean, we learned the cameras together, so it was like I could give the camera to Thomas to do my scenes, and I felt confident, and he could give it to me, and he felt confident with me with the camera for sure.
Right. And which I loved when you go out into the woods alone to get even like, how am I going to record this? How am I going to get the thing out and show you guys at the same time? And this really does, in so many ways, for me, feel like two people, and I think it is your chemistry, it's your relationship, is what carries it so well, because it's almost, you could believe it without the end credits card. You could almost believe this was just two people out there trying to make it big, making a thing. You know what I mean? But there's still this awesome narrative and through line, and then you get to the end, and you see a little bit of the bare face and stuff like that come up, which is so much fun.
yeah, we've had people ask us if this was legitimately a senior capstone project. So that's how you know you made a good film.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And that's it.
We take it.
That's 100%.
Yeah, we take it as a
man.
big compliment when they say
Yeah,
that.
you guys nailed that. And for me, we talked about it a little bit. It's going to be divisive. There's going to be people who like it. There's going to be people who don't. I don't know how much my vote counts, but as someone who has seen it all, man, from I love the silent era all the way up to today, there's something here. There is something here that you guys have that you captured a little bit of magic that I'm just like, I want to see more. I'm interested in hearing more of your voice, and now that you've kind of cut your teeth on it, everybody has to cut their teeth somewhere, and you cut your teeth, you got some of that experience. I'm sure there were a ton of lessons that you had to learn along the way, the hard way and stuff like that. But what you did is just super rad. So what's on the docket, man? Is there any projects? And I saw when I was kind of looking through the production company, Son of. Can you give me any more on that?
Yeah. We started a production company called Stay at Home Sons Productions. So that's where we're going to be making our films from now on. We love it because we both have jobs now out of college, and we're both doing good. But with this dichotomy and stuff, we still live at home with our folks because we're 23, 24. So Stay at Home Sons, and I just thought that was a funny name that also kind of represented where we're at right now. So I thought it was perfect. I loved it.
And what? Bruce Campbell's dad put a second mortgage on their house for them to make the first Evil Dead movie. And I love hearing your dad and your family supporting you. I try to be a super supportive dad to my kids, whatever they want to do. And I just want to, again, Chris, dude, you are the freaking man. So yes, thank you for helping this stuff kind of come to light. So you're working at the college now, you said? So what do you do what do you do at the school?
Oh no, we just got jobs now out of college. So I actually ended up working. So I actually ended up working in news, was what we went to college for. And I went to go into my local news station, WRL TV, out in Raleigh, North Carolina right now. And I work on the assignment desk there. And while I'm doing all that, I come home and I'm slowly writing my next film that I want to do with Thomas, and also one of my best friends, Alante, that lives in Clayton with me. He's been on some big movies. He was on Married to a Baller, which was one of the #1 movies on Tubi for a little bit, and he's one of my childhood friends.
I almost watched it. So that's kind of what I love about Tubi is and I think Fox might own Tubi now, but they've really upped their original content. Yeah, and their original content has just been I did an interview with the director recently, Gil Bronco, who did this movie called A Halloween Feast that showed up on TV.
Yeah, we know Gil.
Do you really? Oh,
yeah, we know Gil. We know
right
Gil.
on.
Yeah.
Gil, he was such a cool dude. And that movie, I loved it, man. And I'm just again, we're here to support all of that, but Tubi has really upped its game, I will say, in the last year, maybe even 2 years, bringing in some awesome stuff. But we're going to be talking about Fossum now too more because, giving you guys this opportunity to do your thing. So you've got a movie. I mean, is there anything, can you give us any little tidbit about the script, maybe a little preview about what might be, what's in the works?
Yeah, I'll give you all a little bit. So I actually have a name for it, which is called Hell in the Hallway. And I always thought that was an interesting title. It's not a horror movie because I was told with the reviews I gotten a lot, because I always liked horror. Horror's always been my main thing. My parents had a strict rule growing up: no horror until I'm 16, right?
Right.
So anytime they left, I was trying to find horror movies on anything.
Right, sure.
My grandma, bless her heart, rest in peace, Sita, I love her to death. She would, help me out watch some horror movies sometimes when they would leave.
Dude,
I was
R.I.P.,
just,
but thank you.
yeah, we love Sita. But I was just obsessed with it, going to Blockbuster and looking at the DVD
Oh,
covers and
dude, the
wondering what that movie
covers.
would be. Yeah, yeah, and I was always obsessed with it. But I think on my next film, I wanted it to be more naturalistic, more dialogue, more like friendship based, kind of like what people liked about Payne's Branch. I want to take that and like really dive into that next movie. So it's
Focus
Hell in
on
the
it.
Hallway, and Hell in the Hallway is basically a phrase I heard, which is kind of about transitional periods in life. You're you left one door and you're trying to get to the other door, and you're stuck in this hallway, and it's hell in that hallway because it's dark, you can't see the other door. So
Rad,
that's what I want to
man.
name it. And it's going to be about basically two kids, and they both have different lives after high school. It's going to be an after high school going to college movie. And, one wants to still play in basketball, and, he has to give it up that his career and dreams of being in the NBA or even playing college ball are done, and he's kind of like living in the past. And the other one's really traditional. He's already in a really serious relationship with his high school girlfriend, and he really just wants that, basic, white collared, white picket
Sure.
fence
That
life
dream, yeah.
in that dream. And it kind of is going to show how they differ. The other one's super ambitious and wants to be like, a Mark Cuban billionaire too, but he's kind of doofy with the way he goes about things. And, the other character who's Alante is going to play is more traditional in the way he goes about things. And it's inspired off a real life friendship I have with one of my best friends. And I'm kind of inspired off that movie because I feel like the character, the ambitious one that sometimes is a little doofy with the way he goes about it. And so it's gonna be pretty interesting. It's kind of gonna show how these two people are able to stay friends, but also navigate. And it's gonna show the pros and cons of both. It's not really trying. I don't want to sway one way or the other. Say this is the right way to live. This is the wrong way to live. I want to say this is one way to live. This is the other way to live. Here are the trials and tribulations of both, and at the end, they're gonna find some common ground.
Oh, dude, I love it. Hell's Hallway. We will be looking forward to it. I think you're moving in the right direction, man. From my opinion, is expand upon that human stuff that you guys were able to create, expand it. And I believe as a cinema connoisseur, I guess, fucking, I just love it. I love, the storytelling element of it. We're getting to this point in cinema where we are hungry for the real. We just want tangible. We want to feel connection. We want to see real human emotion, with AI kind of taking over and, a lot of jobs. You guys talked about it, everything being automated. Like even when we check out our library books, everything is automated. And we are getting to that world where and I think the human, that piece of us inside, that soul piece is going to strive for art that is like, this is real, man. This is somebody's emotions were spread across these pages and this screen and stuff like that. And I believe you guys have the elements to do it. So that's sweet, man. That's awesome. So where can we follow along? Where can everybody check out and follow along? Both of you. We'll start with you, Jake, if you want to give us your socials, and then Thomas after that. Anywhere where people can follow along on this journey, dude, because I really believe that with Gil and with you guys, that this is what it's about. I don't know. For me, this is truly what it's about. It's about not just talking about Michael Myers and Jason and all the shit that we all grew up on loving, but talking about the struggle and the fight to get out there and make a movie. And I haven't been disappointed yet. I sometimes get a little nervous coming to these interviews because I'm like, what if this person's a turd? What if this sucks? But your passion and hearing some of the backstory about the movie and just both of you. So where do we follow along, and how do we become a part of this cool story that is your filmmaking journey?
Yeah, definitely. So we have an Instagram that me and Thomas kind of both run. We actually have a podcast as well where we talk to filmmakers and interview them, and it's pretty fun. It's called a Stay at Home Sons podcast. Out on Instagram at that same name.
I will
and
put
we have
both
little
those in
things
the
we
show
do. We
notes.
post little things. Yeah. We post different things about our filmmaking journeys, and it's kind of just a community where we talk to filmmakers. I love it because I like learning from other filmmakers so much, especially like independent type filmmakers. I find them so inspiring. And also you can find me at Jake Casey with 2 Y's on YouTube. That's kind of my personal YouTube. I post like movie things. I'm a musician as well, so I make music videos and stuff. A lot
I
of my
forgot
music
to
videos are
mention
pretty.
that, dude. Your song was solid when you did that cover.
Oh,
When you were
thank
singing,
you.
yes,
Yeah.
dude. When you were singing by the bonfire, I was like, okay, this cat can really play. I play a little guitar myself, and I was like, okay, he can play.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, really cool, man.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I like music. It's just kind of a fun little creative outlet for me. It's not like I've never been like a super, super serious, like this is my dream in life type musician. It was always like, this is just what I like to do to, I take filmmaking, I think, more serious from like I want to, one day hopefully be financially successful with this
Sure.
as like a more motivation. Music for me, I mean, I'm just going to make the kind of music I always like. That's just how I am with it. But I make music videos on there, also like little short films and stuff. So you can check me out on there. Thomas, you got any YouTubes or anything like that right now? I don't think you do, other than the Instagram, right?
I have a YouTube. I haven't posted in a little bit, but I think if you search Thomas Tarter, should be on there. But mainly I post on my, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
I post on my Instagram, which is Thomas T2000. So if any projects or anything come up, I'll be sure to post on there. So keep tuned on the Insta, and
Sweet.
you'll know what's coming up next from both myself and Stay Home Son.
And those will all be in the show notes. And I before we move on to the last segment of the show, I'm not sure how familiar with you are. Bruce filled you in and everything, but we take a segment at the end of every show that we pause for the living. And this is just a segment where we talk about different ways where we can maybe encourage each other, we can be cooler to ourselves and cooler to each other as a whole. So today's pause for the living actually came directly. I had something else kind of planned, but after talking to both of you, you've kind of inspired my pause for the living. And I talk sometimes about Someday Isle, and it's an island out in the Pacific where I feel like too many people spend their entire lives, and they say, someday I'll do this, someday I'll do that, someday I'll do this. You got to go out and go for it. You know what I mean? You have to chase that thing you want to chase in life, because nobody's going to chase it for you. I think one of the best things you can do is surround yourself by a support system, because you can't do anything alone. That's impossible. But when you have people like Thomas who can show up and act, when you have people like the great Chris Casey who shows up, to support his kid and do all this stuff. So I want to encourage others and everybody listening to that. And I know it feels really hard, man, especially in today's world. It feels hard to accomplish anything. It feels so noisy. It's like, why do I even want to make a movie in a world of a billion movies? Why do I want to write a song in a world of every Friday there's a million new songs? It's because it's in us. It is that, I think, inherent thing, if you're a Bible person at all, God created. I think we're meant to create. I think we are designed to create. Even when you said, I don't play music, even though I'm working on a music project right now that I'm trying to actually put out a little bit. But for me, it's cathartic. Art is cathartic. It's a way to try to understand the chaos of the human condition. And people like you inspire me. You inspire me to continue to go out there and just try, even in the face of people will tell you no. They're going to tell you that your idea is silly. They're going to say, what? You're just the kid from down the road. How could you ever accomplish something really big? But you two are living examples. You're out there doing it, dude. You're out there creating in a cool way. And to me, that is the most important thing we need in this world right now is people. And, hearing you, it even inspired me more. Hearing your next film idea, I'm like, that's exactly what we need. The exploration of the human condition. We need those, Breakfast Club movies, and we need those movies that help us understand a certain period in life. That even though you're both from New Jersey, Florida, North Carolina, wherever you're at, and I'm in Michigan, I think when we strip away everything else, when we strip away our color and we strip away everything, the human condition is the same for all of us. We feel the same fear. We feel the same pain. We feel the same hurt. We feel all those things. And so when artists can find a way to paint that picture, and it's like, oh, you hear me. I feel heard. I feel seen. And I think you guys touched on so much of that with Payne's Branch, and I can't wait to see you do what you do with the rest of it. But that's, kind of the short pause for the living today. I didn't want it to be too heavy. Sometimes it's really heavy. We tackle, depression and other big issues. But today, I think you both inspired me so much to go out there and just keep fighting for the dream, man. Fight for your dream, whatever it is. Go out there and make it happen, and you can do it. If you got no money, if your actor falls out on you, you say, "Hey, Dad, could you please help me out, man? Can you, can you help me make this thing?" It's a good thing that Thomas still has his apartment for 2 months, because I don't know how we were going to reshoot or rewrite this thing, because it might,
Yeah, I was gonna say, if your actor, if one of your co-stars breaks your foot, you stay. You get a summer job and you stay there and make it work.
Yeah,
that's it. See, that's what I'm talking about. That's the commitment to we have to make this thing work. And when speaking with Gil about a Halloween feast, it was a lot of the same thing. It's I was very fortunate enough in my first podcast years ago. I interviewed Judith O'Day from Night of the Living Dead. She played Barbara in Night. Yeah, that one, dude. I was like trying not to fanboy so hard. I'm like, But she expressed that it was this really cool team effort where, when somebody, if you weren't acting, you might be holding up a boom or something like that. But it was a bunch of people chasing a passion, and I encourage all of our listeners, whatever your passion is, man, whatever it is in this life, if you want to be a welder, if you want to be an underwater basket weaver, if you want to be a filmmaker, you act like Jake and Thomas here, and you just go out there and make it happen. Don't take no for an answer, and just go out there and make the dream come true. Gentlemen, I cannot thank you enough for spending time here at the Horror Pop Manor. Seriously, you dudes inspire me to want to be better. All of our listeners, to all of you beautiful souls, if you could, hit that like, subscribe button, that's huge for us. We're in
I do have to ask you, where'd you get that mannequin in the back with the knife?
Yeah, Spirit Halloween. So that's so he's from Halloween H2O, and then we've got Sam from Trick or Treat over here, and there's a Willy dummy actually over there from an episode of The Twilight Zone, from one of my favorite episodes.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, my little podcast sanctuary in here.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much. So any final thoughts, gentlemen? Anything you want to leave with our listeners before we go?
Yeah, going back to the quote that you gave, I thought that was really beautiful, about finishing stuff, not just saying I want to maybe one day do it, finishing it. And I would always tell people, when finding that tribe that you want to finish projects with, 4 quarters is always better than 100 pennies on that. You need the right people. So meet your people, and be inspired by the right people. You can be inspired by those big time filmmakers, and I definitely have my big inspirations, but I really try to take inspiration from everyday life. The nice lunch lady who smiles at you when she puts your food in on college, the nice teacher that inspires. Find your inspiration in daily life. My dad's a big inspiration on me. People like that in your life. My mom's been amazing inspiration on me creatively too, and people like that. So look within for inspiration, not always just someone that's big and doing what they're doing. Because I think a lot of that secret sauce can be found in everyday life.
You're so right, dude.
I think I'm gonna say, off of finishing, now that we're, Jake and I are starting to look for what we're gonna do and places to live and stuff. I will definitely say, just because I've started to look at I don't know, just places to live and stuff as a aspiring filmmaker and actor, I will say maybe look into hotels or apartments with short-term rentals, because you will not stay in one place for too long as a filmmaker.
Right. That's good advice, dude. You'll never stay in one place too long. All right, go out there, check it out, watch the movie, and we will be back next week with our regularly scheduled programming. Me and somebody will be there. Lil Duke, CeeWolf, or B Money. We will be back. Gentlemen, thank you so much, and we will talk to you next week.
No! 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 Horror Pop Extravaganza.